What's up, everybody? It's Greg Corbett with the Living in Phoenix, Arizona channel and livinginphoenixaz.com. Wanted to jump on today and share some info that I found for anybody who might be making the move to Scottsdale. I did some digging into some of the active listings we are currently seeing in South Scottsdale, and there were some red flags that came up that got my attention that might be worth keeping an eye on. Specifically, what percentage of the current active listings are actually owned by investors, and why might that be important to you? As I dug into it, I was definitely surprised by the numbers. So we're going to dive into that and share some data that you might not be seeing currently. So if you think that might be helpful, then stay tuned. So before we jump over to the MLS, I want to give you a little backstory on why I decided to research this information. I actually was filming another video this week doing a full neighborhood drive tour of the South Scottsdale area, was pulling up some listings that I found in Scottsdale to kind of showcase. And after looking at a lot of the neighborhoods, there was just a large contingent of listings that looked like short-term rentals. And this is something I did a video on back in April when we were talking about what was going on with the short-term rental market after Super Bowl, after spring training, after everybody leaves. Are the investors going to need to start dumping their houses? And I didn't really notice too much of that happening in June and July, but now that we're in August, it feels like that is starting to change. Let's go ahead and jump into what I'm seeing. So let's jump over here to the MLS. I'm going to bring up my search so you guys can kind of follow along with me. I'm going to bring up Scottsdale, but just the south part of Scottsdale. So we're looking at the zip codes of 85251 and 85257. 85251 is Old Town Scottsdale, kind of that area, and the surrounding area. 85257 is the portion on the southern tip of Scottsdale that borders Tempe. Both of those zip codes have a lot of similarities, and they're popular because of the location. So that's why short-term rentals have become so popular. But let's just take a look. So right now there's a total of 132 active and coming soon listings in those zip codes for single-family homes. And then what I did as I was going through was just kind of start going through and trying to figure out, which of these properties might be used as short-term rentals. And so, I'll give you a couple examples here that came up in a row and kind of what I'm looking for. As you're scrolling through the pictures, you can kind of get a general feel based on some of the furniture and how the layout is. You're also looking at if it's vacant or not. So we're going to see a lot of that. I'll take you through another listing, kind of, again, something that looks like it's there for people to crash at. We've got an interim occupant here. A lot of times when you see interim occupant, that means it's a short-term rental. Let's look at some other things here. One of the other things that you can find is actually just going into the tax records and seeing if it's non-primary, or you can also find ones that say, let's try this one. Rental residential. So if somebody purchased it as a rental, you'll be able to look at that as well. The other things that you can see, and again, I'll go through the pictures on this one here as well. A lot of times in the notes, if you go back into the notes, they're going to tell you straight up. They're saying this home is currently an Airbnb and showing times will need to be confirmed prior to the showing. But the question becomes, out of the 133 that I found yesterday, how many of those homes do you think are investor versus owner occupied? What do you think the percentage is of investor owned out of that number? Why don't we pause real quick? I want you guys to comment in the notes below what you think the percentage is of investor homes in this area. All right, did we give you long enough time to guess? We're going to go back to the list right now. Again, there was 132 total. 133 is what I had yesterday of total listings, and I selected 100 of them. So out of the entire list, I found 100 that I thought were investor-owned, whether it's short-term rentals, long-term rentals, fix and flips. There were some custom new builds kind of thrown into that list as well. But, 100 out of 133 yesterday. The answer to the question is 75% are investor owned right now. Now, let me say this. I have not done this research before, specifically in regards to the zip codes and, investor versus owner, that type of thing. So I'm not sure how this stacks up to what it has been in the past per se. I'm just saying from an eye test perspective, it seems like there's a lot more short-term rentals and, investor-owned properties that are hitting the market. And when you look at the number of investor-owned versus owner-occupied, it gives me a little bit of pause as to what is the future going to look like for that area. And then it kind of got me, going down the rabbit hole because I don't want to alarm people if it's not a big deal. So I wanted to kind of see if it was, two things actually. I wanted to look at what was going on the condo and townhome side to see what was going on. Well, when you do that, there was 175 total listings that came up in 85257 and 85251. Out of that, there were 137 that I found that were not owner-occupied and looked to be investor-owned. So that's about 78% on the townhome and condo side. Again, that number might be normal, but it just seems like it's a little out of whack for our market conditions. And then I also went ahead and decided to go look at all of the other cities. So I didn't go into each particular one and kind of go listing by listing like I did in Scottsdale, but I basically just went in and said, what is owner occupied? And, came up with these numbers here. So if you look at all of Scottsdale and not just take out, what's going on in South Scottsdale, you have 47%. So obviously a more normal number. Phoenix has 53% investor listings. Chandler's got 48, Gilbert's got 39, 42 in Mesa, 50% in Glendale, 38%. So if you look at most of these, they're in that, let's call it 35 to 55% range. I think that seems probably normal. And then, obviously when you get into the South Scottsdale area, we've got the condos at 78%. We've got the single families at 70%. And then I did look at Tempe. Tempe's got 71% investors. That makes sense because of ASU and all the people that kind of own homes and rent them out to college students, that type of thing. So, but again, still something to keep an eye on. But I wanted to run these numbers as well to see if there were any other areas out there that had a similar feel to what was going on in South Scottsdale. Now, one other thing I did want to note is, especially with all these other cities and kind of looking at what was going on, I wanted to remove anything that was new construction, like any of the large builders, that type of thing. If it's new construction in 2023 and over, I got rid of that. So I didn't want to include that in the investor numbers. I wanted mostly, all these rentals, short-term rentals, or, some of these fix and flippers, that type of thing. That to me is more important than including numbers from builders. Quick reminder, if you guys are thinking about making the move to the Phoenix or Scottsdale area and you need some guidance on what areas to focus on and potentially some areas to avoid, that is what we're here for. We've got our contact info on screen. Make sure to reach out to us. So now that we know all the numbers, let's talk about why it might be concerning for anybody who's looking to buy in the South Scottsdale market. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the Cromford report. So we have the market index. Again, this is what kind of takes a poll on what's going on in the market. We're looking at the supply index again being at an extremely low number around 48, and then the demand index at 77, making it a seller's market based on the low amount of supply. I'll take you back to the housing market page on livinginphoenixaz.com and kind of break it down by section as well. You're still seeing for the entire Phoenix metro area what it looks to be a strong seller's market. Same thing with Phoenix. Scottsdale as a whole shows a slight seller's advantage. Might be because of some of the things we're seeing as far as the rental market, that type of thing. And then let's look at the market just in Scottsdale for 85251 and 85257. If we go and take a look at that, that's given a slight seller's advantage. But look at the inventory here. And this is what we need to really keep track on as far as like the numbers going up. So we are finally seeing an increase in inventory both here in 85257, or excuse me, in 85251, and then also what's going on here in 85257 as well. But what does this mean really for you overall? Because a lot of people continue to ask the question, number one, is it a good time to actually buy a house right now? Does it make sense? Number two, are we going to see some sort of market correction, market crash, that type of thing? A lot of people are still asking those questions, wondering what's going to happen. So in my mind, there's a lot that we still have to see in order to know what that answer is. But there's a few things that I'm looking at. Number one, are these rental owners, are they getting enough income? Are they selling because they're not getting the rental income that they're used to in order to survive with keeping that house on their books? Are people saying, hey, look, this doesn't make sense for me numbers wise. It's time to unload it because I can't afford it. I need somebody else to take it over. And then, do the numbers work on the buy side for other investors? You might have seen other people trying to sell a house and maybe other investors come in and say, hey, look, I'm looking for a short-term rental property. It seems like a good idea for me to get into the market on that. Let me try to do that. Well, now their numbers aren't making sense either between the interest rates and what they're having to pay just to get started. So that doesn't make sense. So that could be a problem. Investors could end up getting a little bit more motivated if the house is vacant and they don't have anybody in there, so they could be pushing prices back down. So all those things kind of lead to a potential domino effect that start having some pressure, putting, as far as pressure, pricing pressure to make these prices come down a little bit. And then if prices come down, then that could get other people to see that and then say, hey, look, I better start listing my house now before it goes down too much. It just becomes, again, like people start following other people. That's how the inventory starts increasing. And once we see the inventory increasing, I guarantee that is going to be a sign of pricing coming down. Our real estate market has been fueled by low inventory. Make no mistake about that. Low inventory has been driving this thing constantly and keeping the prices elevated where they're at. So, and specifically when we're talking about South Scottsdale market, it has been massively fueled by the short-term rental investors. And so, that goes a long way with what we've been seeing. If that starts to take a turn, things will definitely be changing in the South Scottsdale market. Now, a lot of you might be asking, well, when is that actually going to happen? Well, that's hard to say, but this is why we want to keep an eye on it and continue to pass this info along so we can kind of keep an eye on it together and try to help guide you in the right direction and make sure that you're, if you're making a move to the area, you're making a smart decision and you understand what the future could hold, looking at the data as we see it currently. All right, so that's what we got for you guys today. As always, I would love to get your opinion and hear from you down in the comments below what your thoughts are. If you have any differing opinions, if you have anything to add to the conversation that you think might be helpful to, other people that might be making the move out to the area, we are here to help guide you when it comes to making the move here to the Phoenix Scottsdale area, and we absolutely love it. So if you're thinking about making the move, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, however you want to get a hold of us. We got your back. And until the next video, we'll catch you later.